Greetings everyone, welcome to my sketchbook. In the last video that I was kind of playing around with, I was looking at this, which is the 80th anniversary Hot Wheels car. This is for Mattel being around for 80 years, since 1945. And I opened up one of these things just to get a closer look at this Dreammobile. And, well, it's kind of done in that style of dream cars or prototype cars that they would have done in that era, especially after the Second World War, where, you know, dreams and hope and all that kind of fun stuff was prevalent. And, you know, this was the age of science and rockets and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, this is kind of modeled after that kind of a thing. I drew a couple of messy pictures just playing around inside my head, but I also wanted to combine this Monopoly car, which is one of my favorite game pieces, which also in existence is a Hot Wheels 90th anniversary, as it says here, for how long that game's been around. That's really neat. And I know I say the word neat a lot when it comes to these things. Off to one side for Movember, I had this sitting around, which is another version of one of these sort of midget style race cars. Kind of from that 1930s era as well. Here, of course, is a picture of Mr. Monopoly, sometimes known as Rich Uncle Pennybags or Milburn. But anyway, so I spent a little bit of time just sort of thinking about this, and now I'm going to pick up a pen and see if I can figure out a futuristic version of this for the, well, kind of part of the 80-year Mattel thing and the 90-year Monopoly thing. I don't know. We'll see what happens here. But I'm going to do a singular picture, I think, and not just scratch a bunch of really messy things down like I did with that last brain dump. So I have the pen dipped. And no pre-penciling, just let's see what happens with this. And I'll lock this down to some degree. All right. And if we have to refocus, then we'll refocus. So let's set the cover down because I tend to hold on to the cover. I'm going to keep some of this shape, but not perfectly. In my mind, I'm sort of starting to think about let's go with the front of the car first. And up here, we can have an actual hood ornament, I think. And what I'll do is I'll do the Monopoly kind of symbol. Put some like train tracks across it. Just like that. Of course, this is just going to be more rough kind of stuff. Now, one of the ideas that I had in my head would be That the headlights could be in here, but they would be hidden throughout the day unless you're using like daytime running lights or something like that. But in my head, I'm thinking a little bit like the armor on the 1989 uh, Batmobile. So these two here would tuck into the upper one, let's say. That's where I'm kind of picking that in my brain. And I'm doing some semi-finishing as I go, which is not typical of doodling for some people, but sometimes I like to complete little ideas as I'm working on them. So something can kind of look a little bit more finished, but not perfectly. It's not really meant to be anything more than just kind of a fun thing anyway. Here, before I get to the true windscreen part of it, rather than wipers in my head, I'm thinking it would be a series of nozzles that would basically just kind of blow off when you're sitting still, especially. And they could, of course, put fluid, but there wouldn't be wipers, let's say. Uh, yeah, let's kind of play around with the side of this here. I don't picture a futuristic version of this car having wheels. I know it's a Hot Wheels car. Maybe there would be some version of something, I don't know. Now, this is considered kind of like a single-seater race car because you wouldn't want to take someone else with you and risk their lives at the same time, I guess. I guess you'd call that like an open cockpit, kind of like, with the way you deal with airplanes. I think this car might end up looking slightly bigger than just a regular single-seater, but to keep that ridiculous, awesome bubble roof. Here you can have some version of like an air inlet of some kind, if necessary or unnecessarily, I don't know. Something that I was kind of thinking about a little bit in the day would be how the back end of the car would kind of look in regards to the time. So having some version of a fin on it, I think, is kind of important. But at the same time, I'm going to back this out a little bit here because I don't really pay attention to the camera that much. Uh, I almost picture it having almost like a delta wing, like something that you'd see on, let's say, like a Lamborghini. But not perfectly, because at that point they wouldn't have really thought of these kind of designs. But I do think that there would be something that would bridge that gap back here. So I'm going to do kind of a version of that delta wing just a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. Let's just add a bit more detail to this. Finish off the lines just enough. We don't need to have, just going to this car for a second here. So these headers here that come off the manifold of the engine, it's not really necessary. And so like this would be set up as a 4-cylinder, much like the same as that little Monopoly car, which has 4 here as well. Not really necessary. It's weird, I just sort of thought of something. So there's a really expensive car. I believe like Bad Chad is building one. I think they call it the Atlantic, and it would be, there's only a few of them around. Um, I believe Ralph Lauren has one. Anyway, I don't know why I just sort of thought of that, but I think it's because I put those rivets like that there. Now it's not going to be a perfect gumball. Which is what is often referred to as that circle where the number would appear. We could do some sort of like stylized venting here, sort of reminiscent of the exhaust that once was. And because, you know, cool future stuff, you know, power sources are generally blue. I'm not sure why that is. So glowing blue. For that, I'm just going to sneak out the bunny pen just for fun. I'm just going to throw in a little bit of this future blue just for fun. And then we're going to say that this thing is off the ground just a little bit. Okay. So yeah, these race cars back in the 1930s when they were building these things they were kind of like scrapyard finds, basically. So you'd sit around with your buddies and you'd be like, oh, I want to get into this racing kind of thing. And there'd be different governing bodies that would hopefully, prevent people from building super powered machines. So, there would be restrictions on how powerful you could build these cars. And, there were unlimited classes of most things because people were really interested in seeing how fast they could go, but they weren't always about racing with that stuff because you're putting everyone else at risk too by building these machines. So anyway, you need governing bodies to help prevent terrible things from happening. So yeah, I kind of have that delta wing there. I still don't know what I think of it right off, but it's a small sort of thing. The dome. Something interesting about trying to think about the future or what they would have thought about the future at that time. There was the concept of somehow being able to harness nuclear energy. And they didn't really have computers, not the way that we have them now. And you'll hear people talking about, the modern smartphone having more computer power and all this kind of stuff than what they were capable at that time when they were filling entire rooms with computers. I can tell you, human beings are pretty remarkable. If you get a chance to watch Jurassic Park, which is a pretty old movie now, it still holds up reasonably well. There's certain scenes, like with the Brontosaurus and whatnot, that it almost looks like green screen more so than anything else. But like when that movie came out, if they would have made, and I think I talked about this more than twice, if they would have made a companion documentary to that and passed it off as if it was real, I'm pretty sure there would be people that would have been really upset that somebody actually, made a Jurassic Park and brought animals back, because it was so realistic for its time. And as I said, it still holds up pretty decently. So, it would have tricked a lot of people. Kind of like the way AI seems to be tricking people now, which kind of breaks my heart just a little bit because you see some pretty interesting things on the internet. So here I have a bunch of pens, and I have a bunch of paint brushes and stuff in here too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set aside a couple of these, and perhaps, like, these are like pinstriping type things. Oh, that's neat. So this is missing the clip off the end of it, but a Papermate medium point pen, probably one of the best pens you can get, that if you lose it, it's not going to be tragic, but a solid workhorse nonetheless. So off to one side here, of course, I have this fantastic Royal Rhubarb, which by great and honest coincidence is very similar to the color of this Dreammobile. So I'm just going to kind of maybe see if I can get a couple little spots on this dipped in a little bit of red. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Be kind of fun and kind of scary to go back in time. Be more fun, much the same way that you do with, like, watching a video. But it'd be neat to be an observer for certain things that happened in history. I don't think being or having any influence would be good, because if you told people, oh, by the way, this is who's going to be president, I mean, you'd change the future. If you were to have a conversation with JFK, for example, and just said, hey, by the way, look out for this. I mean, that'd be great if you could do that. But I don't know, it might be one of those Back to the Future things where you change way too much and then, maybe you'd prevent yourself from being around, or you'd create a different timeline or something like that. I don't know. So I'm leaving a little shine spot, let's call it. And some part of this ink, I don't know if it's really worth mentioning, but it almost looks like, well, a little bit like blood. But I really like this royal rhubarb. And no one says you have to use this ink with a pen. It's funny, I don't really say much when I'm moving the pen around through finer details. A long time ago, well, a long time ago to me, I used to like visiting a racetrack where they would do drag racing and whatnot, as well as stock car racing. And that was really fun. And there was a summer where I had the opportunity to do a version of maintenance like work. Mostly, the most time consuming thing was to paint sponsors' names on the racetrack walls. And that was pretty fun because, they would get worn or, well, basically destroyed on race day from people just running into the walls. Sometimes they're pushed into the walls, but racing stuff. So that was a fun sort of job to do for the summer, but I worked another job at the same time, so I was so tired that summer. Pretty worn out. But watching race cars, though, that was so much fun. Pretty expensive hobby. At that point in time, I had a Toyota minivan, a 1984 Toyota minivan, so it was a little bit older by the time I had it. And it was rear wheel drive. You basically sat on top of the engine. And that thing, it wasn't super powerful, but in first gear, you could chirp those tires. And I remember there was a time they let me take it down the racetrack, or the drag strip, I should say. And the laughter that came out of the booth was extraordinary. But what the funniest thing was, I had one of the better reaction times. So as soon as like that Christmas tree, as they would call it, as soon as that thing lit up, I mean, I had my foot to the floor and I would just let off that clutch. And those tires they were spinning. Anyway, hilarious. But the front end came up a little bit. So just the thought of that, it's just funny to me. But yeah, the laughter. It's like they couldn't control themselves in the booth with this ridiculous car of mine, the van. And they stayed on the microphone with the laughter. I didn't hear it, of course, over the roar of my 4-cylinder engine. That was a hilarious vehicle to drive. It was a 7-passenger, and I mean, you can still see different versions of them, and in other older videos, you can see like a dinky car version of it that I have. They are hilarious. A marker could do this way better than what I'm doing this with this one tiny little brush. But there's some sad things about race car driving. I mean, beyond what you put into it money-wise, is that it's incredibly risky. And that risk, I suppose that's part of like some of the thrill of it. But I mean, there's certain sort of hobbies that can take you away from your friends and family. And it makes you wonder, well, life should be about calculated risks, I suppose. And you always hear people saying that, that so-and-so might have, well, they left the planet doing something that they love. And I wonder about that, because you think growing old with loved ones or surrounded by loved ones would somehow be worth more than a very expensive hobby. I don't know. I'm going to put a little bit of that shine up here, but not a lot. So I'm curious about that with some people and the time that they dedicate to sport and fun and all that kind of stuff. If it's like, well, I mean, it's got to be worth it in some way. So get that balance, I suppose. The delta wing, I'm also going to fill in, I believe, some little streaks on it as well. This I'm just going to let it be kind of blurry. And I don't know about these louvers up here, if I would leave them kind of pewter-like, or, you know, because chrome and brass. Well, brass more so for the 1930s with some chrome, but chrome would have been a little tougher to come by. Probably in the 1940s, mid 1940s, late 1940s into the 50s, you'd see a lot more chrome on things. All right. Clean that a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of the main idea that I have in my head, which sort of combines a little bit of the 80th anniversary of Mattel with the car from Monopoly. Just opening up my other inkwell here. Get out this other pen. And underneath the delta wing here, I'm just going to darken in a couple of things. Back here. Yeah, so we have that little Monopoly thing there. It's an unusual little project, I suppose, that I've let myself embark on. I think I could probably let this go. I don't have to bring out my other markers for refinement's sake. Right, well, a slightly different version of this combined with this. Yeah, I don't know. Well, that's what my sketchbook is for. It's just for fun. All right then, folks. Well, thanks for hanging out. come back again, and we'll see if we can do something else that's just as silly or just as fun or what have you. And yeah, all right. Ciao for now.